With a pop of the top, we are ready. Welcome to Champagne and Champions. I'm your host, Lorena, and every week I'm bringing you unique stories from people and places that are unlike anything you know. My guests live unconventional lives. Their stories are raw, real, and in champagne terms, brut. They will no doubt inspire you to drink more, eat more, but most importantly, inspire you to live more. Cheers. It's time to celebrate. Welcome to this solo episode of Champagne and Champions. I hope you're all doing great out there. I am doing fantastic because I'm opening up a bottle of Arnaz from Ponzi Vineyards in the Willamette Valley out in Oregon. I don't know about you, but I always thought Oregon was just really Portland, but I went out and visited on a press trip and discovered there is a huge wine country out there. So I highly recommend that you not only visit Ponzi, but several of their other wineries as well. It's just fantastic. So let's grab a glass and let's get to celebrating. Cheers. So today on this solo episode, I want to talk about fear. And before you think this might be about how to be fearless and how to conquer your fear, it's actually not, okay? So I know you've seen the quotes like, be fearless and what sets your soul on fire? And there's a million other of them. But what if I told you that that quote is wrong? In fact, I think that whole feeling is wrong. And to be honest, I used to try and live by it. I would pursue goals and be full of fear while pursuing them. And then I would wonder why I still felt so much fear. Why haven't I conquered this fear? Everyone tells me that I'm supposed to conquer this fear. And ultimately, I would really just feel guilty because my thought was, well, I wasn't actually fearless at all. And that made me question my confidence and really just kind of the purpose of what I was doing because, I was actually very much full of fear. So it was something that made me question everything. And I think a lot of times in our positive motivational society, every quote that's out there is telling you, let me show you how to conquer your fear. So I don't think that I necessarily, and I guess as a misfit, I'm always questioning and challenging everything. So I don't actually believe that to be the case. So on this show, I want to show you how to become a champion in your own life. And Champs and Champs, we showcase the people that are winning at their life and in their profession, and in turn show you how to do the same. But I also want to point out that bringing champions on the show means showcasing their losses and the lows on this journey of being a misfit. And to be honest, this is actually a conversation I've been having a lot lately, and it will be a topic of discussion here on the show quite a bit because I actually don't think the goal is to get rid of the fear. It's really just to get used to it and learn to use it as fuel. And just a bit of honesty, I don't actually believe confident people are fearless. They just, they push past the fear anyway, and they move on despite it. They just don't let the fear win. It doesn't mean it goes away. And I think, a lot of times we're discussing something in regards to not doing that thing or pursuing that goal. And we just end up saying, well, I was too afraid to do that. And a lot of the times these are conversations we're having within ourselves. We're not necessarily, admitting them to our friends and family, but it's reality. And so I get it. Because the fear of failure can be paralyzing. And so much so that you settle into that fear. And settling into it means it's, it's also safety, it's security, because it means you're also not risking anything. And secondly, because you're not risking anything, there's nothing to fail at. And thirdly, there's no one that has been so invested in that thing you wanted to do. So if you didn't do that project, if you didn't pursue that thing, no one's going, hey, where is that thing that you said you were going to do? Where is it? Why didn't you launch that business? Why didn't you quit your job and pursue that goal you wanted? No one is ever that invested. So I get it. And I understand that really, when you're not risking anything, no one's necessarily questioning why you settled into the fear. But with that said, I want to just actually let you know that there is a much bigger reality out there and a much bigger fear that you, essentially need to be afraid of. And it's bigger than the fear of failure, actually. It's the fear of regret. So you're listening to this because you don't want to hear just how I've been successful or how my guests have been successful. I want this platform, to be, again, a platform to discuss the lows as well and to keep this show real. And because I've been talking about this so much lately, I actually wrote a blog post about it on travelingSolo.com, my travel blog there. And I was on a press trip, and they had a ziplining tour set up. And on that ziplining tour, I was just like, I wanted to do it, but I am deathly afraid of heights. And I ended up doing it anyway because I thought, well, what better way to try and face my fear, I guess, than to do it? But I was dying inside. And also they had set this up for me. So I thought, why wouldn't I go forward and try it? But at the same time, I knew people would see how vulnerable I was. They would probably see me cry, but I knew this was something I wanted to do. So I was going to go forward and do it anyway. And I did it. And ultimately, I realized I did not die. And it was a beautiful experience being in Oregon and among the trees. And it was a beautiful day. And just relating that back to my professional life, I sort of just realized I'm always going to be okay. And what I've learned over the 7 years that I've been working for myself is that really everything will always work out. And I learned that the fear of regret is actually greater than the fear of failure. Because when it's in regards to ziplining, I knew it was something I wanted to do. And I was going to regret not doing it far worse than if I had gone and cried and and it didn't really fail. It actually worked out, And I guess it was like, yes, I'm afraid of heights, but I would be afraid of never flying. That is a great quote. I actually love that quote. And the fear of regret is what can fuel me. So how do you switch that fear? So you might be like, okay, well, I have this fear. There is something I want to do, but how do I switch it? Well, first of all, just much like you settle into the fear of failure, I want you to settle into the comfort of the idea of failure or the fear of regret. Okay? I want you to know that you may fall, know that you may fail, but also know that you'll always be okay. So when it comes to what you really want to do in your life and like what speaks to your soul, you might not do it because you're afraid. And that's it's just a sad thing. If there's something that you want to do and you think about and you let something, it's not an actual person other than you yourself not letting you do that thing. You're telling me that you're going to let this feeling not let you do something? So here's a quote that I actually really love. It says, "I'd rather feel the sting of failure 1,000 times than the numbness of mediocrity once." And I love that quote because, again, you're listening to this. If you're listening to this and you're like, well, there isn't really anything I want to do, well, then this podcast may not be for you. But if there are things you want to do and you've had these desires, you've had these ideas of these things that you're passionate about, but you're just so afraid to do them, remember that at the end of your life, do you want to look back and say, well, I was too afraid to do that thing? And if you have kids, do you want to set that example? Think about that. And really, I want to leave you with this. So when you have to review and think about what it is that you're afraid of, I just want you to ask, are you doing the things, I want to ask you actually, are you doing the things in your life that you want to do? And if you are, then again, this podcast isn't for you. But if you are not, I want to help you to do those things despite the fear telling you not to do them. And I know our minds get going a million miles a minute. So you don't need to, if you're like, yes, there is something I want to do, don't overwhelm yourself with the plan that you want to start creating right now. It doesn't have to be this grand plan that has to happen today. But start with this. Just speak to your heart. What is it saying? And what should you be doing that you aren't? And to throw another fabulous quote out there at you, it says, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step." So I want to know if you have the guts to pursue what you want. And when I ask you this, please just don't respond with no and leave it at that, because I know deep down you want to win. I know you really want to be the champion that you were meant to be. But in order to do that, you have to be willing to lose. You have to be willing to face the fear of failure, because the fear of regret, my friends, is far worse. And I know, I don't know anyone out there who hasn't experienced regret, but it is far worse than failing. So I want you to get comfortable with that. Settle into that fear. That's, instead of trying to get past it, accept it and learn how to use it. So you guys, thank you so much for listening to this solo episode of Champagne and Champions. Please visit us on champagneandchampions.com for more great episodes. And please stick with us for next week's motivation, inspiration, and some celebration. Cheers, guys. That's this week's episode of Champagne and Champions. Make sure you tune in again next week for some motivation, inspiration, and some celebration. Cheers. Thanks for listening.